Welcome explorers. Today, dive into the thrilling TTP narration of Hunting with Predators by Banancake, a 25-part fan-made saga from the Nature of Predators series by Spacepaladin15 on r/HFY.
Memory transcription subject, Vikri, Venlil volunteer crewman of UNS Cardinal. Date, standardized human time October 28, 2136, 11 days after the Battle of Earth. I run through the cramped corridors of the UNS Cardinal, tools in hand. The Cardinal is part of a sprawling formation that is currently merging with a Federation battle group at breakneck speeds. The relentless firing of the cruiser's rail guns means I have a lot of work to do. Azek follows behind me, a fellow Venlil. All around us, humans hurry about as the cruiser takes hit after hit to its angular hull. Every bang and vibration carries with it a heat wave that rushes through the corridor before dissipating through the ship's cooling system. The air has become stiflingly hot. As we're scampering through the hallway, dodging tall predators and sometimes even ducking between their legs, I feel my paws leave the metal floor. A sickening sense of weightlessness overtakes me as everything in the corridor that isn't strapped down floats into the air. We're all violently thrown to the ground a second later as the gravity generator kicks back on. My tools scatter across the floor with a cacophony of metallic clanging. My head slams into the metal paneling, and my vision blurs. I roll around on the ground, groaning, clasping my paws over the back of my head. Azek picks me up, and we scoop most of the tools from the ground and continue running. My head throbs as pain swells within it. Finally, we reach our goal. Azek hastily removes the bolts from the panel and throws it aside. Come on, come on, come on. I'm going. I'm going. I slide into the narrow crawl space on my back. I switch on a flashlight and hold it in my mouth as I begin pulling back wires to access a switchboard. Fried, just as I thought. The ship rattles as I start disassembling it with an electric screwdriver. A bypass would have to do for now. As I pull a bundle of wires, I feel a burning sensation course through my arm as an exposed lead electrocutes me. Damn it! I yelp, dropping the flashlight from my teeth. I struggle to maneuver around in the tight space and find my only light source in this suffocating hole. I can feel panic setting in. Finally, one of my paws finds it, and I clutch it and bite back down. I pull a pair of goggles over my eyes and get to work with a handheld plasma torch. The space heats up fast, and smoke threatens to strangle me. I try to hold my breath while the lights outside flicker. I cough violently as I finish bypassing the switchboard. I scramble to slither out of the crawl space as Azek pulls me out by my feet. I press the side of a comms device in my ear. "How's that, battery?" I shout, gasping for air. A fuzzy, human voice answers through the earpiece. "That did it, damage control. We're back in the fight." I hear the third battery begin firing again. I feel the recoil pass through the wall in waves as I steady myself against it. Azek throws the panel back on and loosely fastens it. He grabs me by my arms. "You all good?" he shouts over the noise. Yeah, I just took a good knock to the head. Everything's fuzzy." I answer. If it's bad enough that he can see it, it must be worse than I thought. Just then, sirens start blaring over the ship's intercom, followed by a robotic voice that repeats, "Incoming. Incoming. Incoming. Missiles are inbound." Azek and I brace against the wall as the ship vibrates, soaking up the recoil from the point defense cannons. Their muzzles aren't audible, but everything else is. I hear a low-pitched hum above me, followed by a metallic rattling as a point defense cannon opens fire. Humans sure like their kinetics. There's no outside view. There are no windows or viewports, as with most of the ship. We cannot know how many missiles are incoming or where they will hit. For all we know, they could blast through the adjacent wall and kill us instantly. Suddenly, the lights cut out as I hear and feel a loud explosion to the aft of the ship. Two more follow in the same area. They're going after our engines. We rush down the corridor to see the extent of the damage, guided by the red emergency lights lining the hull. I keep one paw on the wall to steady my fading balance. We round a corner at a T-junction, turning left and right again. I feel a strong air current flowing to the back of the ship. Rounding into the corridor, I see that everything, and everyone, is burning. The engine room on the other end is engulfed in flames. Twisted metal juts out on either side of the hallway as sparks rain from the ceiling. Several humans rush by us, bleeding and covered in horrible burns. They seem oddly calm considering their wounds. The fire suppression system hasn't activated. This entire section is beyond saving and probably losing atmosphere. I know that at any moment, the blast doors in front of us will close, and the whole area will be vented to stop the inferno from spreading. The fire will suffocate us all if it isn't stopped immediately. Isaac, however, doesn't seem to know that. He charges in towards an extinguisher. I reach out to stop him. Isaac! Wait! Don't dash, it's too late. The door nearly closes on my paw as it slams down. I panic and start hitting buttons on the control panel to open it, but it's useless. The entire system is locked down. This door isn't opening. I hear a hiss from the other side as the atmosphere is vented out, smothering the fire and every life still trapped inside. Where one would expect to hear screams and final words, I hear nothing but the silence of space on the other side of the door. The noise around me fades away as my paw rests on the control panel, trembling. Dread begins to cloud my mind. I start gasping for air as it feels like an unseen force is crushing my ribcage. Nausea begins swelling in my stomach as my morphing vision worsens. The sirens blast over the intercom once more, and the robotic voice repeats, "Incoming! Incoming! Incoming!" This time, the point defenses aren't firing. I freeze. The world around me fades away. I'm going to die on this ship. Suddenly I feel the giant paw of a predator grasp me by the shoulder and pull me away from the door. He lifts me off the ground with uncanny ease and carries me over his shoulder down the corridor. He runs with a heavy stride, his boots thud against the metal floor as we join in with a sea of running humans. The captain's voice blasts over the intercom. "All stations abandon ship." My vision continues to worsen as I hang over the man's back. It only adds more fuel to the fear. I look down at my hanging arms and watch as a bead of liquid lands on one of them. Blood. My blood. What pod were you assigned? I hear the man ask as he hurries down the corridor. He speaks with such evenness and authority. TH3. I stutter nervously, desperately holding back the urge to vomit. How convenient, he mutters to himself. We arrive at Pod 3 and hurry inside. The human sets me down in one of the seats, and I begin to strap in with my shaking paws. My coordination is off, it feels like I barely have control over my limbs. The tall predator rushes back to the door and pokes his head out, looking for anyone else on their way to the pod. The sirens continue blaring as the man taps his foot impatiently. Come on, come on. I hear him mutter. The missiles begin to hit without warning, and the ship buckles as the lights go out again. Out of time, the man says solemnly as he sits next to me and hits the launch button. I see flames swirl outside the viewport as the pod drops from the ship. Another sickening sense of weightlessness follows as the pod lurches away. In an instant, all the noise of the battle, the explosions, the incessant clanging of steel, all of it is gone. The inside of the pod is eerily quiet. I only hear my own panting and heartbeat in my ears as I try to catch my breath. What's your name, soldier? The man asks beside me. I swallow a breath and answer, Vickery. The human chuckles briefly. Vickery reminds me of an old friend. He places a hand on my shoulder. It's warm. Reassuring. I'm Tenga. We're gonna be alright, kid. In that moment, I feel a sense of ease break through the wall of panic. I look into the predator's eyes as my vision darkens completely. Through my impaired hearing, I hear the man begin shouting at me. I feel my body being thrown about as he shakes me. The world goes dark. We're gonna be alright. My eyes sprung open, allowing Sol to flood my vision with light. I shielded my face with one paw as I realized that I wasn't lying down. I was sitting against a tree facing the sunrise. Tenga snored next to me, bundled in his thick jacket. My breathing was fast, and I could feel my heart racing. It all felt so real. I could even feel a sharp pain in the back of my skull. The events of the past few days returned to me slowly as my breathing steadied. I set my head back against the tree and took a deep breath. I looked over at the sleeping lieutenant. He looked awful. I could see the edges of the tears in his forearm past the bandages. A layer of dried blood was caked over, sealing the wound. I could see his skin reddening in that area. As malnourished as he was, I couldn't imagine him being able to combat an infection forever. I was determined to see him live, even if it meant watching him kill an herbivore. I wondered what I would have thought 10 days ago if I'd known I'd be in this situation. Suddenly the realization hit me. I didn't remember waking Reese and Grant last night. Shit. Did we fall asleep on our watch? I jolted forward, rubbing my eyes. When I looked back up, I could see Reese and Grant sitting on the other side of the extinguished fire. They sat across from each other on the ground with a small stump between them. Grant had his hand on the stump, his fingers spread wide. I watched as he held up a knife in the other hand. What the? He brought the knife down, and it just missed his hand, the tip piercing the stump right behind his thumb. He continued to stab the wood in between the rest of his fingers. I nearly fainted. What the hell are you doing? The predator yelped as the blade nicked his middle finger. He withdrew his hand from the stump and placed the finger in his mouth. He looked over at me. Well, good morning to you too, he said, shaking his hand. Reese laughed boisterously. We're playing five-finger fillet, and you just cost Grant a turn. Bullshit. Let me get a redo on that one, Grant insisted. Reese made a broad gesture to the stump, inviting him to try again. I stood up and approached. Querek was still wrapped in the blanket next to the fire pit. His chest rose and fell with his steady breathing. Relieved that he hadn't died in his sleep under the watch of these crazy humans, I stood over the stump. What kind of insane game was this? I watched as Grant raised the knife again and began weaving it between his fingers. He got faster and faster with each pass, just narrowly missing his flesh with each strike. I watched in awe and terror as he started his third and final pass. It was horrifying to watch but impossible to look away. Finally, Grant planted the knife in the stump and removed his hand. These humans either had no regard for their own safety or were highly confident in their hand-eye coordination. Perhaps both. That's all you got? I could do it that fast with my eyes closed. Reese laughed. You could what? Well then, Tenga said from behind me, yawning. I felt guilty as I realized I probably woke him with my shouting. Let's put it to the test, Tenga chuckled as he stood behind Reese. Reese picked up the knife. Ready when y'all are. Tenga placed his giant hands over Reese's eyes. There was no way he could see past them. Reese took the knife and gently passed it over his spread fingers, letting the flat of the blade touch each one. He set it back at the starting position and breathed deeply. His first pass was slow, but the rhythm only quickened from then on. By his third pass, he had matched Grant's pace, which was by no means sluggish. As I watched, I held my ears down to the side of my head with my paws, looking on in horror. At any moment, he could full-on stab himself in the hand or lose a whole finger. To my relief, Reese triumphantly planted the blade in the stump as he finished his final pass. Tenga removed his hands from his eyes. Someone lost at this game a lot as a kid, he laughed. Yes sir. Gotten a bit rusty since then, though, Reese replied as he studied the shallow cuts on a couple of his fingers. I exhaled deeply and let go of my ears. How can you do that without seeing? I asked. I knew that humans didn't have any sort of sensory hairs or some crazy magnetic field detection. It just didn't compute in my head. Muscle memory and a little spatial sense, Reese answered. Spatial sense? I replied, perplexed. So you have more than 5 senses? Tenga walked over to me. It's called kinesthesia, but it's more of an awareness. There's no external input, we just know where our limbs are relative to the rest of our body without needing to see them. With that, we can mentally map out our surroundings through touch. So Reese knows where to put the knife because he knows exactly where his fingers are relative to the rest. It isn't perfect, but it can be improved with practice. We'll look at the biologist, Grant poked. I get a lot of tiny aliens asking me questions about this kind of stuff, alright? I laughed at them. I'll stop with that one for now, then. How's Querek? Let's ask him ourselves, Reese said as he stood and approached the furball bundled up on the ground. He knelt next to him and shook him gently. Still alive, partner? Querek opened his eyes sleepily before rolling onto his back. Just about, he replied. His voice sounded coarse. I don't think I've ever been this thirsty, he groaned. Grant approached the fire pit. The water from the condenser had collected in a small metal pot buried halfway in the snow. By now, it was nice and cold. He poured it into a canteen and brought it over. He held Querek's head up as he put it to his mouth. Querek engorged on the ice-cold water, gulping it down for several seconds. Grant rested his head back down. How's your arm? It feels like it's on fire. Yeah, Wolf tore it up pretty good. Feeling okay other than that? Yeah, I think I'm good. I'm just cold. I feel so exhausted. Alright. We'll carry you in the sling again, then. Make sure you're eating, you should recover that blood soon enough. Querek's ears flattened slightly as he nodded. He grunted as he slowly sat up. Reese held an arm behind his back but let him sit up on his own strength. Most predators might have left him to die rather than risk their safety to nurse him back to health, but humans weren't most predators. Tenga began to pack up. Let's see if the heavens will hear our plea today, Reese. Reese reached into his jacket, pulled out the radio, and turned it on. He repeated the same old hail as though he were just reciting a mantra. He finished his recital, and we all waited quietly. Static played for a few seconds before we heard something. A short tone that lasted just a fraction of a second before being overtaken by the noise once again. We all exchanged glances and leaned in, huddling around Reese. Repeat, Reese said into the device. This time an avalanche of short and long tones came over the speakers. The wall of static was broken. Reese nearly fell into the stream. Get me a pen and paper. Grant tore his bag open as he rummaged through it. I've got a field journal, anyone got a pencil? Tenga picked up a piece of charcoal from the fire. Try this. Reese opened the journal and began to write a series of dots and dashes inside as he held his ear close to the radio. We all watched in anticipation as he transcribed the message onto the page. A long pause followed before the radio repeated the message. Reese wrote letters and numbers beneath each set of lines and dots. It read 46.24 N-114.14 Hamilton. Reese's face lit up. They're coordinates. They're fucking coordinates, he laughed as he stood up. They're still out there. The humans laughed and celebrated as they huddled around the stump. A second message began to transmit, and Reese sat back down again. I could hear him mumbling to himself. Dot, dash, dot. He finished transcribing the message and wrote letters under it once again. It read, beware. Stragglers about. All of us crowded around Reese. Stragglers? Do they mean Federation? Grant asked. Tenga tilted his head. Maybe their escape pods landed in this area too. I'm more curious about how we're supposed to find those coordinates. Reese pointed to the journal. Well, we have a name. Hamilton. It must be a town. We might find signs leading us there if we could find a road. The group nodded in agreement. Well, if we're receiving this now, it must mean we've been getting closer. I think continuing west is a good bet. Now that we're out of the worst of those mountains, we should be able to make much more ground, Grant pointed out. There's still the food issue, Reese added. I have no clue how far away this place is, but I doubt it's a day's journey. Grant and Tenga nodded. I could see the hunger starting to wear them down. They seemed more lethargic. I worried that if we came across more predators, it might not go as smoothly as it did last time, and last time did not go that smoothly. Tenga sighed. All right. Okay, we get one good kill. We eat our fill, take everything we can, and start walking. One good kill, Grant concurred, picking up his rifle and spear from a nearby tree. Reese stood up and snapped the journal shut. One good kill. The humans seemed invigorated. They moved with renewed purpose as they began to pack everything up. I helped Reese fashion another sling and helped Querek climb in. He was putting on a brave face, but I could tell that he was in a lot of pain. If I could tell, the humans undoubtedly could. I followed behind Tenga as we fell back into marching order. Tenga looked back at all of us. Let's get this done then. We filed out of the campsite. A few dots and dashes had given us all a new drive. It was relieving to know that someone was out there. I doubted they had any means of rescuing us, but they at least had the means to send out signals. I didn't know what we might find at those coordinates, but I imagined we'd find other humans and Venlil there too. Maybe we'd even find some of the crew from the Cardinal. For the first time in 11 days, we had a resource that had been in short supply. Hope.